Wonderful way to have the last session of the day. A lot of interesting questions. Maybe before I ask a couple of my own, anything from the audience that you wanted to ask any of the presenters? Abel, there's one. If we could get the microphone there, please.
Okay, thank you for the wonderful presentations. It is working. Can you hear me? Yeah. Wonderful presentations. I'm particularly curious about Daniel's and Jens' presentation on the simulation of equilibria in the models you presented, in the collaborative models you presented. Did you simulate equilibria, and did you do any gap analysis on this?
No, we didn't do any simulation. It's purely conceptual. I think that's the next step that one need to do is like think about what's actually the system that you want to set up. The problem is that there is like thousands of ways to set it up, right? And you need to somehow decide how to set it up, then run the simulations. There is also, I mean, there's so many ways to go about it and test it. You could also try it with prototypes.
Because there are some, and I think Sean is also very familiar with that. There are some very interesting algorithms that can centralize decentralized systems and can also distribute centralized systems with very simple utility, like the gathering algorithm, or in game theory, you have the median voters theorem. And that's quite interesting when you make that comparison between centralized and decentralized and possibly distributed, and trying to match the right system to the right to the industry clockworks, so to speak.
Yeah, I think the real challenge is to find the simple rules in the complex system. For example, IPD is successful in my opinion because it has very simple incentive rules and basically gives an easy objective function for the people to participate, very clear rules. And I think this is something that one needs to keep, even though there is potential for very complex systems. I think when you look at a lot of examples that work, for example, in nature, they also follow very simple rules that optimize simple interactions, but the objective of the overall system optimization is always clear. And I think there is a lot of potential for research to actually try to identify those mechanisms for construction.
Thank you. Any other questions from the audience? I think Sunny over there.
This is kind of like a general blanket question for everybody here. So did you guys identify potential like industry partner outside of the organization that you're working with right now to actually test some of the system? I believe perhaps I watched some of the previous preceding recording. I remember IPD was mentioned earlier in the last, if I'm totally mistaken, call me out, but just wonder is on both contexts in China and elsewhere, outside of China and the West, have you guys identified partner in the industry that actually tested out? Or if you haven't, are there any roadmap for that? Yeah, that's my question.
I think that might be more for Jens, given that you were talking about
the IPD, like, no, we haven't. I mean, this is more a concept and idea for now. I think we don't have the resources to actually build a system that could be applied with industry partners in a real world case. And I'm not even sure if IPD is a thing here in China. I actually don't know. But I think, yeah, maybe you work with industry, right?
We didn't find any partners in industry. Yeah, we are seeing the theory research.
Thank you. Anybody else on questions? I was curious to ask for everyone kind of mentioned the fragmentation and the small role of the small players in the industry. And I know, Eleni, you talked about, the SMEs and their role, but also I think in project delivery. What do you think from your research, from your findings, could be done to improve adoption of such innovation that we are all discussing here at this conference, specifically with the smaller players in the industry? Anything that you've come across? Maybe Eleni, you're online, so maybe we can start with you and then move here.
Yes, thanks for the question. This pattern, yes, came a lot in the discussions. I think how the SMEs can get more engaged, because their main problem is having capital, right? Liquidity. So it's a combination of technical solutions that they could leverage. For example, project bank accounts. I've worked with the same team on a different paper explaining about project bank accounts and how they can help a lot with liquidity and give more visibility to the SMEs. And the other, apart from the technical, it's a more organizational governance part that I explained more in the presentation. So through consortia, they can have access to resources to build their skills, to be able to understand more about the technology and be part of it. Especially open innovation ecosystems, whereas in closed innovation ecosystems, what we will see is more contractors essentially governing the process, closing things up, and then the entry for SMEs it's much higher. It's more difficult for them to be part of it. So technical solutions, yeah, like project bank accounts could help with that, and organizationally the more open system.
Perfect. Maybe in your work for the discussions that you're having with, on prefabrication and modularity, what do you think would help organization adopt some of the suggested findings that you have? Either of you? What can help with adoption of the work that you're proposing?
We think that our study and the adoption of our methods is far and seriously, it's hard to adoption in the adoption. So we think it's a long time to adopt in the industry and help the organizers or other methods.
Anything from you on adoption? Maybe Jens, kind of how do we bring the integrated project delivery into reality?
Yeah, I have I mean, not related to IPD, related to actually the modular integrated construction. I think it's actually a great use case to push blockchain into industry because it follows this vertical integration approach. So you have actually large players that can top-down enforce maybe a new system. And I see it as a very important and interesting first step to actually bring this system to industry, maybe see how they perform in certain scenarios. I do have some questions how useful blockchain is in such a system. I think maybe the supply chain is still fragmented enough that it makes sense, but the more integrated a system becomes, I think the less likely it is to benefit from an innovation like blockchain. Because the main, I mean, bringing an idea like the decentralized IPD approach that I present is very, very difficult, right? So maybe if people see that it works in certain scenarios like modular integrated construction, they're more likely to try it out in a more decentralized system. But regarding SMEs, I really think that the decentralized system would benefit them more. Because I think the more you go towards vertical integration, the higher the entry barriers become and the less likely it is that SMEs succeed. I think in that sense, it's more beneficial to keep the system we have and try to adjust the governance system so that these SMEs can actually harvest a lot of the value creation through this peer-to-peer approach.
Brilliant. Thank you. Well, I think we're 10 seconds out of time, so probably I'm going to hand back to Renny or Turbe to close off today session. So thank you so much, everyone.